In 1980, one of the greatest financial minds of our time actually lost $5.4 million.
Yeah, which is a staggering amount of money.
Right. And he didn't lose it in like a massive market crash or, some terrible stock tip.
No, it's completely self-inflicted.
Exactly. He lost it because of his own stubborn psychology over just a few hundred shares of a regional oil company.
It's wild.
It really is. So welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going on a mission to decode the operating system of Charlie Munger.
And we have a massive stack of sources on the desk today to actually help us do that.
Yeah, we do.
We're looking at a famous 1994 speech he gave on worldly wisdom, his 50th anniversary essay on the Berkshire system, an article detailing a billion-dollar bet on electric vehicles.
Which is a crazy story, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we also have notes on his early real estate ventures and, of course, his absolute masterclass text on the psychology of human misjudgment.
Right. And I really want to say this directly to you, the listener, right up front. This deep dive, it isn't about how to pick stocks.
No, not at all.
If you're looking for, hot stock tips or whatever, this just isn't it. This is a shortcut to making better decisions in literally every area of your life.
Yeah, it's about upgrading the very mechanics of how you process reality.
Exactly, upgrading your mental hardware. So I guess the best place to start is, how does a mind like Munger's actually get built?
Well, it really starts with this intense respect for survival. He grew up in Omaha during the Great Depression.
Right, which totally changes a person.
Completely. It's an environment that hardwires this profound aversion to catastrophic risk right into your brain.
Yeah, you don't take things for granted.
Exactly. So he studies math, he eventually goes to Harvard Law School, and he builds this very successful legal practice.
And this is key, practicing law presented like a mathematical ceiling for him.
Right, because he was just trading his time for money.
Yeah, it's a linear equation. And he realized early on that linear equations, they do not build generational wealth.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And they don't provide ultimate intellectual freedom either.
Right. So he needed a scalable system, which is what led to his pivot into real estate.
Yeah. And looking at the notes on how he made his first million, it's really interesting because it's entirely devoid of that usual, get rich quick house flipping mentality.
Oh, yeah. No flipping at all. He capitalized on the post-World War II housing boom by buying multifamily residential properties.
But the mechanism he used is what really stands out here.
Margin of safety, right.
Exactly. It was a relentless application of a margin of safety. He completely refused to rely on, optimistic market projections to make a deal work.
So no banking on the housing market just going up forever.
Right. He bought properties at prices so far below their actual intrinsic value that the downside was just mathematically capped. Even if the housing market completely stagnated, the steady rental income, which he amplified by using, responsibly managed leverage, it ensured a compounding return.
So it was asymmetrical risk, like heads he wins big and tails he barely loses anything.
Exactly. But the real estate was really just the launch pad. The true breakthrough was his realization about cognitive processing.
Right, how we actually think and learn.
Yeah. He realized that memorizing isolated facts or viewing the world through just a single professional lens, like just law or just finance.
It leaves you completely blind.
It does. It leaves you blind to how the world actually functions.
And this is the foundation of his entire philosophy, right? The lattice work of mental models.
Yes. Munger argued that reality just doesn't care about the neat little subject boxes that we invented in university departments.
Like, reality doesn't know what the biology department or the economics department is.
Exactly. A complex business problem isn't just an accounting problem. It's a psychology problem, it's a biological ecosystem problem, and it's a mathematical probability problem, all at the exact same time.
And he estimated you only really need about 80 to 90 fundamental models to figure most of this out, right?
Yeah, drawn from hard sciences, engineering, biology, psychology. Those 80 or 90 carry 90% of the freight in becoming worldly wise.
So the analogy I like to use for this, just to make it make sense, is think of these mental models like your smartphone's operating system.
Okay, I like that.
Right. Because if you only have one app, say like the calculator app, you can't use it to write an email or navigate through traffic.
Yeah, you'd be totally lost.
Exactly. You need different apps, different models working together to process reality correctly. If you only look at a complex life problem through, say, the economics app, the world is blurry. You're missing critical context.
Yeah, but when you open the biology app and then the psychology app on top of it, Suddenly the blur disappears.
Right, the apps cross-pollinate and you can actually navigate the problem.
And that synthesis is where the magic happens. Because
Yeah.
without those overlapping apps or lenses, you fall victim to the man with a hammer syndrome.
Oh, to a person with only a hammer, every single problem looks like a nail.
Exactly. You will subconsciously torture reality to fit your one familiar model. But once you build this multidisciplinary tool belt, your worldview just fundamentally shifts. You stop seeing companies as static spreadsheets.
And you start recognizing them as living biological ecosystems.
Which perfectly brings us to microeconomics and scale. Because the sources show how Munger used the biological model of evolution to understand free markets.
Right, because in nature, extreme specialization allows certain animals to just completely dominate a specific niche, right? Like essentially starving out all the competitors.
Yeah, and businesses do the exact same thing to achieve massive advantages of scale.
The Wrigley's chewing gum example from the text is a perfect illustration of this.
It really is. They achieved a scale of brand recognition that created this massive psychological moat.
Because, think about it, if you are standing in a store and you see Wrigley's for 40 cents, and then some totally unknown brand for 30 cents...
You're not going to buy the unknown brand.
No. The biological drive to avoid a potentially gross experience completely outweighs the 10-cent savings.
Yeah, the scale of Wrigley's reputation makes it virtually impossible for a newcomer to steal market share.
And early television advertising acted as this huge accelerant for this, too.
Massively. Network TV was so prohibitively expensive back then that only the absolute giants could afford to buy the ads.
So the big brands bought the megaphone, which gave them more scale, which then gave them more money to buy more ads.
Exactly. The scale just fed on itself like an apex predator in a nutrient-rich environment.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to push back on this logic for a second.
Okay, what's the issue?
Well, you're painting a picture of a guy who demands a boring, predictable margin of safety, right? Investing in chewing gum and sure-thing monopolies. But then, in 2008, Munger convinces Warren Buffett to drop $230 million on BYD, which was a completely unknown Chinese battery startup.
Yeah, he did.
That sounds like a wild, speculative venture capital play. I mean, those two approaches totally contradict each other.
It definitely looks like a contradiction, but only if you were looking through a traditional finance lens.
Okay.
To Wall Street, yeah, BYD was a massive speculative risk. But Munger was looking through his overlapping lenses. He wasn't betting on a tech startup. He was betting on a biological anomaly.
Oh, so he saw it as an ecosystem thing.
Yes, BYD was a vertically integrated miracle. He saw a company that had internalized the entire supply chain.
Right, from mining the lithium to building the battery cells.
To manufacturing the semiconductors, all the way to the final vehicle assembly.
Wow.
But the definitive factor was actually the psychological and engineering model of its founder, Wang Chuanfu.
Munger famously described him as a combination of Thomas Edison and Jack Welch, didn't he?
He did. Yeah. Which is an incredibly rare combination of traits to find in one human being.
I mean, yeah, you have an Edison-like genius for solving complex physical engineering problems from scratch.
Combined with Jack Welch's ruthless, machine-like operational efficiency.
That's a powerhouse.
Exactly. So when Munger's multidisciplinary models aligned, the technological integration, the massive total addressable market, and a literal genius at the helm.
The margin of safety wasn't in a low valuation, it was in the unparalleled competence of the ecosystem.
Precisely. His philosophy dictates that when the models align that perfectly, you don't dabble, you bet big.
And that single investment generated over $7 billion in profit.
It's incredible. But, they achieve this massive scale, right?
Yeah.
But Munger realizes that scale solves an economic problem, but it creates a physics problem. Massive objects naturally develop inertia.
And in business, that inertia is bureaucracy.
Yes, this is the dark side of the biological ecosystem. Munger warned heavily about the disadvantages of scale, and he pointed to AT&T during its monopoly days.
Ah, right. Because when a bureaucracy becomes that massive, the feedback loops just break down entirely.
They do. The organization becomes completely insulated from the very market it serves.
The sources actually describe a culture there where employees start believing their actual job is just moving a piece of paper from their in-basket to somebody else's in-basket.
Yeah, they completely lose sight of the end customer. The overarching goal of the organism shifts from deliver value to protect the middle management hierarchy.
So people just spend their days justifying their own existence rather than innovating.
Exactly.
So how did Munger and Buffett engineer an antidote to this? I mean, when they were building Berkshire Hathaway, they were assembling one of the largest corporate empires in human history.
Yeah.
How did they avoid that physics of inertia?
By completely inverting the standard corporate playbook. They designed Berkshire as a radically diffuse conglomerate.
Right, we are talking about a multi-billion-dollar empire run out of a tiny office suite in Omaha.
With essentially no central headquarters staff, no HR department, and no unified corporate strategy imposed from the top down.
The sources highlight this brilliant analogy Munger used, comparing their management style to the legendary UCLA basketball coach John Wooden.
I love this analogy. Wooden won 10 national championships by playing his top 7 players almost exclusively.
Wait, really? Just the top 7?
Basically, yeah. The logic is brutal, but effective. If you concentrate all the playing time on your absolute best players, their learning curve accelerates exponentially.
And your opponents are always facing your highest level of talent.
Exactly. And Berkshire applied this directly to their acquisitions. When they bought a fantastic business, they retained the CEO, granted them extreme, almost unheard of autonomy, and fundamentally just left them alone.
So they didn't rotate executives through different subsidiaries or anything like that?
Nope. They let their top players play their specific game uninterrupted by headquarters.
But, autonomy requires a specific type of fuel. You can't just buy companies and leave them alone without a mechanism to capture and redeploy the value they create.
Right, you need capital. And this is where the financial engine comes in, the insurance float.
Ah, yes. Berkshire aggressively acquired casualty insurance companies like GIO.
Yep, because when you pay your monthly car insurance premium, the insurance company holds that cash until a claim is filed.
And that massive pool of held capital is the float.
Exactly. Assuming you run the insurance operation disciplined enough to generate underwriting profits, that float acts as essentially free leverage.
So Munger and Buffett basically engineered a system that continuously generated rivers of cash.
Rivers of it, which they could then extract and expertly deploy into new acquisitions using their mental models.
All without ever having to micromanage the daily operations of the businesses they already owned.
It's brilliant.
It really is. But designing a flawless corporate structure and a brilliant financial engine is entirely useless if you don't understand the buggy hardware that is actually running it.
And by buggy hardware, you mean the human brain.
I'm talking about the human brain, yeah.
Munger considered this his most vital area of study. Because despite his elite education at Harvard and Caltech, he realized the academic world had completely ignored the systemic, predictable flaws in human cognition.
Smart people constantly do irrational things.
All the time, and traditional economics couldn't explain why. So he spent years synthesizing what he called the psychology of human misjudgment.
And the absolute heavyweight champion of those psychological models has to be incentives.
Oh, without a doubt. Munger called it the reward and punishment super response.
We all think we understand incentives, right? But the sources argue we vastly underestimate their power to completely warp behavior.
Yeah, consider the Federal Express anecdote from the text.
Okay.
FedEx faced this systemic failure. They could not get the night shift to load the airplanes fast enough.
And if the planes miss their departure window, the entire overnight delivery promise collapses.
Exactly. Management tried everything. They tried moral suasion, they tried threats, better training. Nothing moved the needle at all.
Because they were paying the workers by the hour.
Yes.
If you pay a worker by the hour, you are literally incentivizing them to take as many hours as possible to complete the task.
The company's goal is speed, but the worker's goal is time. They are completely misaligned.
So what did they do?
The fix was a masterstroke of psychological alignment. They shifted the compensation from time-based to output-based. They paid the workers per shift.
Oh.
The deal was, the moment the planes are fully loaded, you can go home and you still get your full shift pay.
And I bet the results were instantaneous.
Planes were suddenly loaded ahead of schedule.
So if you're listening to this and you're managing a team right now, or even just trying to get your kids to do chores, you have to look at the exact metric you are rewarding, because that metric is the only thing you are going to get.
Absolutely. Xerox learned the dark side of this, actually.
Oh, yeah, the copier company.
Yeah, they engineered a vastly superior new copier, but sales were just stagnant. It turned out the commission structure offered a higher payout for selling the older, inferior machines.
Oh, wow. So the salespeople were just pushing the bad machines to make more money.
Exactly. Perverse incentives will make perfectly ethical people rationalize terrible behavior every single time.
which I think seamlessly connects to another major cognitive blind spot Munger identified, which is the reason-respecting tendency.
Yes. The human brain is a massive pattern recognition machine, and it desperately craves reasons to categorize its actions.
The story of Carl Braun's engineering company perfectly illustrates this.
I love this story. Braun built oil refineries, which is a business where miscommunication costs millions of dollars, or, human lives.
Right. So he instituted this draconian rule for all company communications called the 5 Ws. You had to dictate who is going to do what, where, when, and crucially, why.
The why was the linchpin. If you issued a directive to a subordinate and failed to explain the precise reason why the task was necessary, you could be terminated.
Fired just for leaving out the why?
Yes, because Braun understood that the human brain rejects arbitrary authority.
Supplying the why unlocks neurological compliance. It transforms a command from this tyrannical demand into a logical puzzle that the employee is now a partner in solving.
Exactly. A directive without a why isn't leadership. It's just a hostage situation for the employee's time.
That is such a good way to put it. But we have to address the more dangerous side of these psychological biases, too.
Right. What happens when these mental shortcuts don't just cause workplace friction, but actively hijack our rationality and force us into catastrophic errors?
This brings us back to the $5.4 million mistake I mentioned at the very start of the deep dive.
Yes.
It's rooted in what Munger called the deprival superreaction.
Human beings are evolutionarily wired to hate losing something significantly more than they enjoy gaining something of equal value.
We react with visceral irrationality when something we feel ownership of is threatened.
Munger illustrated this with a really vivid story about his family dog. It was a perfectly obedient, gentle animal. But there was one guaranteed way to get bitten.
Try to take food away.
Yeah, try to take a piece of meat out of its mouth after it had already clamped down on it. The dog wasn't being malicious. Its prefrontal cortex was just being overridden by an automatic deprival super reaction.
And we think we are so much more advanced than the dog, but we bite just as hard if you threaten our territory, our status, or our perceived wealth.
We really do.
Yeah.
And Munger himself fell victim to this with Belridge Oil.
Right. So break down what happened there.
Well, he bought 300 shares of this heavily undervalued company at $115 a share, and he used cash he had on hand.
Okay, smart move.
Yeah, but the very next day, his broker offered him a block of 1,500 more shares at the exact same bargain price.
So a purely rational actor would have bought the shares immediately.
Of course, but Munger declined. Because to buy that second block, he would have needed to sell a different asset or borrow the money. His brain triggered a deprival super reaction. He refused to suffer the minor psychological pain of parting with an existing asset or taking on the discomfort of debt.
So he let psychological stubbornness win.
Yep. And shortly after, Shell acquired Belridge Oil, and those shares skyrocketed to nearly $3,700 apiece.
Oh my God.
His refusal to endure a minor deprival cost him roughly $5.4 million in missed profits.
That is painful.
It is. And Munger uses these isolated biases to build to his ultimate, most terrifying concept, the Lollapalooza tendency.
Right, because extreme outcomes in human history, both magnificent successes and horrific disasters, they rarely stem from just a single psychological bias.
No, they occur when 3, 4, or 5 biases combine, operating in the same direction, and they completely overwhelm rational thought.
The McDonnell Douglas airliner evacuation test is probably the most sobering example in our sources of this.
It really is a tragic example. The government mandated a test to prove a newly designed airplane could be fully evacuated in the dark within a specific time limit.
So McDonnell Douglas set up this realistic simulation in a darkened hangar, using real people, including elderly volunteers.
And the first test was an utter disaster. People panicked, resulting in severe injuries.
Rationally, the engineering team should have halted everything, redesigned the safety protocols, and analyzed the failure.
Of course. But instead, they ran the exact same test again that very afternoon.
Which resulted in even more severe injuries and a case of permanent paralysis.
Yeah.
So how does a room full of brilliant aerospace engineers allow that to happen? I mean, it wasn't stupidity.
No, it was a Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
Their prefrontal cortexes were being hijacked by 4 competing primal forces simultaneously.
Okay, let's break this down. What was the first one?
First, you have the reward super response. The company's financial future depended on passing this test to sell the aircraft. The incentive to succeed was blinding.
Got it. And the second?
Second is Authority missed influence. The government regulators demanded a realistic test, and the engineers blindly deferred to that authority figure, bypassing their own internal safety instincts.
Wow. Okay. And third was social proof, right?
Exactly. You have dozens of employees in that hangar who likely felt sick to their stomachs about how dangerous the setup was. But they looked around, saw no one else raising a red flag, and subconsciously concluded that their own internal warning system must be wrong.
Right. Like, if nobody else is panicking, it must be fine.
Exactly. And finally, deprival superreaction.
Because they had failed the first test.
Right. Having failed the first test, they were suddenly staring at the massive loss of the aircraft program. Like a desperate gambler trying to win back a devastating loss, they just doubled down.
The combined force of these four biases created a Lollapalooza effect that completely short-circuited the collective intelligence of the entire room.
It really is terrifying when you break it down like that.
It is, because knowing how a jet engine works won't save you if you don't know how your own brain is tricking you. So, what does this actually mean for you, the listener, navigating your own life? The ultimate takeaway from Decoding Charlie Munger is that continuous learning, specifically building a multidisciplinary lattice work of mental models, is your only real defense against deeply flawed human cognition.
You have to actively hunt down new lenses to look through, or reality will eventually blindside you.
Yeah.
I actually want to leave you with one final, deeply uncomfortable concept from the sources. Munger called it the Persian messenger syndrome.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah. In ancient times, the Persians had a brutal habit of executing the messenger who brought the king bad news.
Which is obviously a terrible incentive structure.
Right. The inevitable result was that messengers quickly learned to either run away and hide or simply lie to the king.
And Munger argued that modern organizations and relationships still subconsciously execute the messenger.
We do. We punish the people who bring us hard truths. We deny promotions to the employee who points out a fatal flaw in a project, or we get intensely defensive with a partner who highlights a mistake we made.
We do it constantly without even realizing it.
So I want you to examine your own environment. Have you accidentally built an ecosystem, whether at work or in your own home, where people are terrified to bring you bad news?
Because Munger believed that only good news can wait. Bad news must be welcomed immediately and rewarded so you can address it before it metastasizes into a disaster. That is so true. So as you go about the rest of your day, ask yourself, are you acting like an ancient Persian king, demanding a comfortable illusion of good news? Or are you a rational thinker, actively soliciting the hard truths so you can upgrade your mental operating system?
Remember, you don't want to face the muddy waters of reality relying on a single lens. Keep building your lattice work.